Good morning, everyone. How are we doing this morning? Good. All right, good. Glad to hear that. As you know, my name is Corey Honey. I'm the Sheriff of Butte County. I'm gonna start off our press conference today and then turn it over to Acting Director Bill Croyle to give you an update on the work that's been going on the flood control spillway in anticipation of them beginning to utilize it today. All I have for you this morning, what we've been doing with regard to our emergency evacuation planning and the maps that we have put out. Last night we had our you can go to buttecounty.net/OEM. And I'll spell that out, buttecounty.net/OEM. From that website, you can go to an interactive map, enter your address, see what zone you're in, see what your evacuation route is. You can also sign up for the emergency mass notification system. As I've said in the past, if you have any problems with that, you can email info.sheriff@buttecounty.net, and my staff will contact you and help you get signed up on the mass emergency notification system or answer any questions that you might have. If you see some issue or problem with the plan or the maps, I would ask that you'd also email us on that and fix it. We had a couple of people note a problem with one of the maps, the way it displayed on the internet, and we were able to get that information, get that fixed last week. So that's very, very helpful, and we appreciate that. With regard to the mass emergency notification system, one of the things I want to be clear about is if you have a traditional landline phone serviced by one of the phone companies, we have the ability to do a reverse 911 to your home. But if you have a phone provider that is internet-based, internet over protocol, IP phone, you need to go onto the mass notification system and sign up and enter both your home phone and your cell phone so that we can be assured we can make sure that we can contact you in the event of an emergency. So I'm hoping that people will turn out to our meetings. We will be noticing those as we go forward. And at this point, I think we'll turn it over to Acting Director Bill Croyle so he can tell us about the good work that's being done to get the flood control spillway up and running. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good morning. Again, Bill Croyle, Acting Director with the California Department of Water Resources. So we have another watershed moment in our effort here in addressing our concern with our flood control spillway. So what I'm going to do is start off with some of the standard numbers that we all like to hear about. So right now, currently there is no release of water over the flood control spillway. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. The lake elevation is 864 feet, so it's risen about a foot in the last 24 hours. Fortunately, we've had some amazing weather here in Butte County and up Canyon here in the last week or so, which has allowed us to continue really a high level of activity with regard to work on the emergency spillway, removal of debris material at the diversion pool. So our inflows right now are about 16,000 CFS. And our tail race elevation on the Hyatt Powerhouse is 225.6 feet. Again, that's down quite a bit from where we were a few weeks back. To date, we've removed an amazing amount of debris from the pool house, 1.25 million cubic yards of the 1.7 that we have mapped out in the diversion pool. So I can't say enough about the team that has gone in and tried to look at how best to remove that from the water side, from the land side. And it's just been an amazing amount of work done 24/7, and that work allowed us again to fire up the Hyatt Powerhouse and continue that work as we increase flows down the river at 12,900. So some of that material, some of the equipment that has been working on debris removal has been demobed out of the way, so it's not located at the base of the spillway where it comes into the diversion pool. So obviously we don't want that equipment and those construction contractors, the safety and inspectors, etc., below the spillway when that's activated later this morning. So today at 11 o'clock, we're going to reactivate the flood control spillway. We're going to open the gates and progress over a number of hours up to 50,000 CFS. So over the past couple weeks, we've been evaluating what that level of release should be, whether it's 40,000 CFS or 50. So we're going to start at 50,000 CFS, and towards the end of this run, which will be 5 to 6 days, depending on the inflow into the reservoir, we'll ramp down to 40, continuously evaluate the condition of the flood control spillway to see how it's performing, and then we'll make decisions here during the week on how we will step down out of 50,000 to 40,000 and ultimately back down to zero. Okay, so again, that's 5 to 6 days. We do have some incoming weather. This is weather, so the forecasts keep changing every day. We're modeling and forecasting that twice a day, rerunning our reservoir models and looking at what that might do to reservoir elevations, and that is actually will impact when we start stepping down the reservoir from 50,000 to 40, and if there's some other steps as we go down to ultimately zero about a week from now. So the Hyatt Power Plant is running right now at 12,900. So as we step up our flows on the spillway today, we'll start backing off on the Hyatt Powerhouse. Ultimately today that will be zero coming out of Hyatt. The reason for that is we want to make sure we understand the backwater effect on the powerhouse. We want to protect that powerhouse, so if we start moving that water and we have a backwater effect, again, raising that elevation on the Hyatt Powerhouse, then we want to understand how high it might get, again, as we reach full capacity on the spillway. Our desire, of course, is to reoperate that Hyatt Powerhouse as soon as we can. We might wait for the duration of this event and restart that plant later in the week. But if we feel like it's safe to run both the spillway and the powerhouse at the same time, we're obviously going to do that, so that helps us move water out of the reservoir. With the incoming weather, it does look like this morning is forecasted to be a little cooler than it was forecast a couple days ago, which is in some ways good. I would like to see some additional snow melt and a rain come so that we can move some water during this spill event out of the reservoir. So again, that would be one of the factors that might extend the duration of this spill. We do need to spill the reservoir, get down to an elevation that we're targeting 835, 838 feet. That will be right kind of where we're going to need to stop, unless our spillway acts the way we hope it does with all the mitigation measures that we put in place. That decision on where we do and how we step it will be made later in the week as we assess the function of the spillway. I have a lot lot of pictures up here today, and I'll go over those in just a moment. But there's a number of areas that, with the amazing weather that we've had, we've gone in with our, again, multi-agency teams with a lot of independent consultants. Our regulatory agencies, again, have been all working hard together over the past number of weeks to look at what mitigation measures we might take to ensure that we can continue operation of this flood control spillway. So again, we'll go over these pictures in just a moment, but this includes grouting the face of underneath the spillway where we have the damage occur. We have a few pictures there, some rock bolting. So we've gone into the spillway and rock bolted, or basically reconnected, reinforced the concrete spillway back to what I call Mother Earth. The idea is to make sure nothing moves around while we go through the spill event. We've also gone to extreme efforts to basically clean out and caulk every crack that we can find on the deck. The idea there is to ensure that we don't have any additional water moving down through that deck that might further compromise the system. But I want to remind people, I've said this from day one on this, what you see today, you might not see tomorrow. I want to set that expectation is because this is an impaired system. What we're doing in mitigation this measures continuous monitoring throughout not just the spill event, but every day we're continuing to assess the condition and what things are moving around. And that's why it's so important to better understand the mitigation measures that we are fortunately be able to put in. So again, we'll look, and when we come back off of this spill event, we'll go back in, reassess, see what's moved around or not moved around, and if there's additional measures that we can take, we will take them. So for setting expectations for future. So our Project Operations Center back in Sacramento, again, is part of the modeling every day. They're working very closely with the California-Nevada River Forecast Center, and again, taking those models, taking those forecasts and rerunning to see what it looks like. They're also looking at history. How often do we spill over the spillway during wet years, dry years? We're obviously on the wet side of things right now with our snowpack pushing over 168% in this watershed. And so the idea is, what is our prediction for future use of this spillway? The sooner we can get water out of this reservoir down to a level that was safe for us to get out on that spillway and start the reconstruction process, the better. That'll help us, again, meet our objective of having a spillway we can use by the beginning of flood season next year. So at the moment, on a super wet kind of runoff, in other words, it's warm with the snowpack that we have, we're looking at 3 spills such like that we will do today between now and June 1st. So we don't want to use this spillway if we don't have to, but today will be the first of those potentially 3 spills. Now, if we have a mild, cool spring, early summer, then our models suggest that we can get away with 2 spills, including the spill today. So the operation of the Hyatt Powerhouse is very helpful to not only get water out of the reservoir, but help balance downstream water conditions within the flood control system. In other words, with Hyatt operating, we'll have about 13,000 CFS. Any water that we can spill out of the spillway or come out of the thermolator afterbay will help minimize these large elevation changes within the river system all the way down the system. We do have flood operations. John Patch is here today. He and his staff are completely connected up with this incident command post to make sure that we're communicating not only between each other, but within the flood control partners. This is part of what we do on a daily basis during our normal flood operations. So we expected with the 50,000 CFS, again, we'll be balancing those flows today between the Hyatt Powerhouse, going to 0, discharges from the thermolator power or afterbay, and then ultimately the spill off the spillway, all through the number of hours midday today. We expect water levels within the Feather River to move up between 10 and 15 feet, depending on the geometry within that flood control system. So an important message today is please stay out of the flood control system. It's a dangerous place to be during flood season. So as we make these water level changes, increase flows, I encourage the public and our other agency partners to be very, very careful, and if possible, really stay out of the flood control system. Again, Hyatt Power Plant is still operating 5 of its turbines today. It will go to 0. They've been working since March 2nd. I'm starting to call the Hyatt Power Plant the Mighty Hyatt because it's how we maintain our water supply and managing our reservoir elevations through the coming spring. At some point, we won't be able to get additional water over the spillway, and so again, that water's got to come through that Hyatt powerhouse. The work on the emergency spillway. So that work is almost done. That spillway again is been reinforced and armored up into the areas that were affected by the erosion, at least in the upper part. The armory has been done, so to the extent if we had to use it, that we've mitigated the major concerns that we have there. That doesn't mean that we're done there, but with regard to our emergency response actions based on what happened a couple of weeks ago, that work, again, it should be done here in the next couple days. And then we'll go through, and it's part of the recovery process is to go back in and reassess that area. Maybe in closing, what I want to talk a little bit about is the recovery activity. So as I said from the beginning, as soon as you start an emergency response incident, you start recovery. So our advanced teams, again, have been brought together. It's a multi-agency team with our third-party consultants, and now we have the independent board that is overlooking all of the work that's being done by this process. So they're based out of Sacramento, but the advanced teams have been in and out of the incident command post and crawling all over both the emergency spillway and the spillway itself. So this week, a number of drill rigs have been mobilized to the site to start collecting the geotechnical information that they need to start vetting out all the information they need to kind of fine-tune the kind of corrective actions or the mitigation measures that are needed to reinforce and repair the flood control spillway and the emergency spillway. But there are some what we call no regrets projects that we're moving fast on. So just to kind of make sure people kind of understand if they see things going on that's aside from the emergency response, there's the emergency recovery activities. Those no regrets projects include improving our haul roads going into the base of that area, primarily from the north. It includes the mobilization of a rock crushing plant. So rocks have been removed from this area, taking off, crushed, analyzed to see if we can use some of this rock in the reconstruction of the spillway. We also plan within the next couple of weeks to mobilize a concrete batch plant. The idea, we know we're going to need some concrete on site, and so securing those resources, putting them on site, developing those staging areas and processing areas are critical to how we step through this as fast as we can. Again, as I said, the drilling for the geotechnical information has been started. They wanted to jump into the spillway. We didn't want them to do that until we get after this spill event. And as soon as we can, of course, dry up that spillway, then you'll see their drill rigs dropped into the spillway so that they can go and poke those holes and assess that geology underneath that spillway while we have a dry environment in that spillway before we do the next spill. Again, most of those activities will actually start within the next couple weeks and then would be completed fairly shortly after that. I also want to invite Tracy to come up from Department of Fish and Wildlife to talk a little bit about the effort we have going on this week with regard to fish resources.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Tracy McReynolds. I am a staff environmental scientist with the Department of Fish and Wildlife out of our Rancho Cordova region. I provide biological assistance to the Feather River Hatchery on the collection, rearing, tagging, and release of spring and fall run Chinook salmon and steelhead. And I first would like to thank Department of Water Resources and the hard work that our two agencies have done to mitigate the actions from the spillway incident. It's been very successful. It's taken a team of engineers, biologists, pathologists, health, safety, security, staffing, moving and being ready to take any changing situations and mitigate those effects. And it's been a complete teamwork on many levels with both agencies. We have successfully tagged our first million spring run Chinook salmon, and we plan to release the first million of spring run Chinook salmon on Monday, March 20th in river, and then we will continue tagging the second million, which will bring our total to 2 million successfully tagged spring run Chinook salmon. After the spring run Chinook salmon are tagged, we will move into the fall run Chinook salmon that are at the Thermalino Annex and the Feather River Hatchery. After the fall run are tagged, we will then move to this steelhead. There have not been any major losses due to the incident that has occurred. It has been successful. We've had our department pathologist out pretty much on a bi-weekly basis to assess the health of the fish populations. They're looking good and healthy, so we haven't had any major losses. We will continue to monitor the health of both the steelhead and fall run that remain in the facilities, and we will continue to work with the Department of Water Resources to mitigate any future incidents and be prepared to get through a successful collection, rearing, and tagging and release season. So everything's been going well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Also, want to recognize, I mentioned John Pash. Where's John Pash? Raise your hand, John. Okay, so if we have questions on the flood control system or coordination with flood ops, then John's here. Also want to recognize Mark Anderson. He's the Deputy Director for the State Water Project. So Mark and I are working side by side, both here at the ICP as well as down in Sacramento, to make sure all of these cats are herded up, being our other multiple agencies, again, and our third-party consultants. What I want to do next, and then we can jump into some questions, is kind of go over the graphics and pictures we have here. So this is a graphic of... Sure. Okay. Yeah, got it. Okay, there we go. We'll take all of it. Thank you. So this is a graphic of kind of obviously the end of the spillway. So these are the areas that we've been working on. The deck itself, again, has been caulked and sealed. We shotcreted the underneath the sections that we were worried about with regard to erosion. The idea there is to help protect and support this area to the best we can. This is important when we go through our flows from less than 40,000 down to zero. So at 40 or 50,000 and higher, what we see is the water flows off the top of this spillway and hits what we call the plunge pool, and doesn't necessarily really touch the surface. And so, but as you go into a lower flow environment, then we have water coming and hitting this slope at a different angle. So the idea there is to try to protect that as we go through the change in flow rates, especially down to zero. So the rock bolting that we did is throughout these panels at the lower end. There's also some work that's been done up on the side to try to connect one of the walls that was starting to move around on this side. The idea here is, as I said, what we see today we might not see tomorrow, but the idea is to maintain the integrity of this spillway the best we can through the duration of not just this spill event, but future spill events, until we can get necessary water out of this system. This is a graphic of the crew that was actually doing the shotcreting. Again, I'm amazed when you go out and see what they've done to get this work done. Put in the scaffolding, and obviously this gray area is where the shotcreting has occurred. This is a graphic of the people that actually did the shotcreting, so you can see what they were actually doing with the metal mesh behind it that they're spraying and connecting the mesh and the shotcrete to the subsurface conditions underneath the panel. The next couple of graphics are the different drill rigs that they were able to lift onto the spillway deck, put in the rock bolts. Here's an example of the bigger rig that they put in so they can move a little faster to get this in. There's a rock bolt that's been replaced. to be grouted and then stressed to hold this deck down, and here's they're installing or drilling the hole for the rock bolt. Just a picture of both rock rigs here, and here's where they're actually installing one of the rock bolts down into the deck itself. Here's the kind of a graphic of what a rock bolt system kind of looks like, and then a picture of some of the people that worked really hard going through every little nook and cranny on that spillway deck to make sure it's been cleaned and kind of epoxied up. So with that, I'll move on to any questions.
Yeah, I was hoping you could kind of talk a little bit about where we are in deciding what this is going to look like by next year before the water year starts. I mean, what are you guys envisioning this spillway is going to be still up?
I think we're about 2 weeks from actually seeing what some of those graphics look like. I was briefed yesterday as they narrow down some of the options. Again, they're looking at both what permanent or temporary options might be. So what they're looking at is, and we're running this again together, not only with the various design teams, but with the regulatory agencies and the independent board that's overlooking everyone's shoulder. So as they're vetting those alternatives, we expect to have our kind of top two within the next 2 weeks, and then they'll go through an assessment of constructability, schedule, and resources. We need to make sure the resources are available to do one or more option. We're doing two because if there's a critical flaw in any of that, schedule, resource needs, or just the design, then we can off that and choose the other option.
Is it going to look, whatever these two options are, is it going to look similar in design to what we have now? Is the spillway going to be lower? I mean, what are they looking at?
Well, there's a whole bunch of different options. Some are pretty interesting. Some are exactly what you see there. Then it's a matter, is it, what flow rates are you designing to? So you might see something that looks similar to what was there, but designed for a lower flow rate, which means we have to operate the reservoir differently. And that's part of the going back and forth with not only our designers, but with the regulatory agencies and then ultimately the independent board. Okay? That'll be in hopefully less than 2 weeks, but in the next 2 weeks I think we'll be excited to see what those options kind of look like. Question?
Are you any closer to figuring out exactly what caused damage to the flood control spill? And when do you know that before constructing the
that team's come together now, and so they'll come along and look at all the information that we see on the site now, the geotechnical information that will be produced through the as long as it all works. Okay, obviously I'm fighting with the microphone up here. Hopefully everyone can hear. So as those the forensics teams come together and put that together, a lot of what we would want to know is actually washed down into the river. So I think the geotechnical information, the condition of the deck, is all going to be part of that forensic analysis. So absolutely, any information that's coming to bear while we're doing all this is going to be very important to the design team and the independent board and our regulatory partners. Okay, in the red?
Can you expand a little bit more on the asbestos situation? If any GWR employees have been complaining, or you guys had to take anyone to the hospital or anything like that?
No. Actually, we have our industrial hygienist here, but once you come on up, and Dave, and so we've done our due diligence. We're working very closely with the Air Quality Management District, testing, verification testing. So there's the amphibilites has been identified. Come on over. But I think those detection limits are very low, and so there hasn't been any employees but we're also doing aggressively, as you would in any construction project, the dust mitigation, all the typical dust concerns are being addressed by some of our best management practices. And we just speak to it.
And where you found it, is it limited to a small section of the hill?
Yeah, the geology of this area has naturally occurring asbestos in it throughout this region and a lot of places in California. When we got on site, we got access to the spillway after it was stabilized. We did some surveys from an industrial hygiene standpoint. We're not geologists. So we're looking at it from a community exposure assessment and also our worker exposures. So we looked for anything that we thought was suspect, sampled it, and in conjunction with the AQMD, we've developed a plan to protect the community and our workers too. And we've got a robust 24-hour-a-day air sampling campaign going on right now. They're rushed out to laboratories. We're getting very encouraging results coming back right now, but it's in final QC before it's released. But right now, we're very optimistic about the outcomes. My name's David Beadle, B-E-A-D-L-E. I'm a certified industrial hygienist and also a certified asbestos consultant in California.
How wide of a range are you monitoring?
We monitor the perimeter of our work zones, and that is being still established. We're bringing in more equipment every day as we see the need and see potential areas that we'd like to study. And then within the work zones, we have a very dynamic system. As the work changes and the objectives change, we change our air sampling techniques to match that.
Do you mind grabbing that mic, walking over there to show us what
Just grab the whole thing.
are of concern? And just kind of show if it's moving in the air or if you've been able to shoot down.
The areas of concern that have been identified, and again, it's a very large place. The thing for us that made it a little bit easier to look at was it was scoured clean. From a geological standpoint, it's a great opportunity to look at the rocks. Once it's under the dirt, we can't really tell unless it's on the surface. There's been, hundreds of people traversing this area and a lot of our geology team. So if they see anything that's suspect, they bring it to our attention. We would flag it and pinpoint it. But right now, small vein in here, and it kind of traverses the hill. But historically, there's notes of asbestos in the area all the way back to 1868. So it's geologically just part of what we live with in this region of California and others too. So even though we've got a massive or very large work site, the places that it's been identified are minimal. However, because we're still in that sampling phase and we're waiting for some analytical, until all the analytical's in, we're erring on the side of caution and protecting the community. So again, 24-hour-a-day microscopy techniques are being employed, and we're using the best labs that we have access to, and they're all on very rapid turnarounds. And again, the outcomes right now are very optimistic.
You said the geologists are seeing if any areas are suspect. Can normal people detect it?
No, not really. It looks like a rock. It would be, we're so used to in, our society right now of asbestos in building products. So you think about floor tiles and drywalls and shingles and things like that. And that's what we're used to in the K through 12 asbestos rules that we use to protect our children at schools. This is really kind of different because it's the raw material that was provided to us in the geology that we're on top of. So it's basically a rock. Yeah, okay.
Other reporter questions, please?
Yep.
Bill, is there any discussion anywhere to show where, in terms of accountability, why this happened and who's responsible?
Well, I think the record speaks for itself with regard to the level of effort that's gone into monitoring, assessing, investigating the site in general. The records speak for themselves. When we look at our records, which have been made available to the public, we being the department, our regulatory agencies, and independent third parties have been all over the site for a number of years. I think one of the more recent reports, instead of just 5 independent consultants, we had 20 involved. And so with regard to the emergency spillway and the spillway itself, nobody identified any kind of potential risks that we have here. When we have challenges with regard to maintenance, the records speak for themselves on what work was done, when it was completed, etc. But that will also be all part of, I think, all of us, the industry, whether it's dams, spillways, flood control systems, water supply, wastewater plants, everybody is re-looking at what we do to monitor, assess, inspect, whether you're an owner and operator or a regulator looking at critical infrastructure.
So was it not done, was it not inspected properly? In other words, is there any person on site or anywhere else who is responsible for this having happened by not doing due diligence to make sure this didn't happen?
We believe that,
Would be responsible for this?
well, as a dam owner, the facility owner, ultimately the department's responsible. We believe we've done everything that we are required to do and more with regard to any actions that led up to this. So if you're looking for who's responsible,
Because this didn't happen. So there's many citizens out there who I speak with who are upset. They say, well, somebody has to be accountable because this shouldn't happen. That's why we're paying to make sure this doesn't happen. So there's nobody, one person or a group of people that are responsible for this.
again, I would say as a dam owner and operator, we're required by the regulatory agencies to perform our due diligence and correct any deficiencies that are identified. We believe we've done that. The regulatory agencies, I think, have a robust record of doing their job, as well as the independent third parties. And so this happens, stuff happens. And so you get a flat tire on your car, you're running your car out of oil. I mean, these things happen. And so, we're going to get into how this happened, why it happened. Again, that'll be done by this independent body of experts. And so we'll learn a lot from this, and not just here at Oroville. We're going to learn a lot across the world. The world is looking at what happened here, how we all interact. That's an important process as we kind of look at some of our technology and our infrastructure that we have in place.
Next reporter, please.
What's the cost to date and what's the estimated cost total?
There's some numbers that are been used early in this process to replace the spillway between $100 and $200 million. It's likely to be much higher as we get into this and see the cost of removing the debris and coming back to whether it's a temporary or permanent fix, not just with the spillway, the emergency spillway, how we manage the sediment in the river, the necessary resources, like haul roads to get in and fix this facility. So we're going to know a lot more about some of the costs to repair this site here in the next couple weeks, but then also we have some more longer range efforts that we have to do recover from this incident that may actually take us a couple years. So those activities are being vetted out now, and that'll be part of our recovery team's effort to better define those costs.
How much has been spent so far?
Well, the numbers that I'm aware of through the end of February is like, what was it? Mark, do you remember? I sit here, all of a sudden, it's $100 million. So I think it was, every day it kind of changed a little bit depending on, like, as an example, the day you're using 6 helicopters can get pretty expensive. Right now, those costs are far lower. We don't have as many excavators and trucks running around because there's not enough room and we're about ready to spill. But during February, I think the average was about $4.7 million a day. Thanks, Mark. Another question?
If the fixes for the spillway do not hold up, for example, let's say tomorrow, would you stop water coming out of the spillway, reassess on, off, that kind of?
So it's a good question because we have a very active and we have a team of, again, wide variety of professionals, safety people included, that are very important to keep everybody safe. Everybody wants to get close to the end of this to watch all this happen, and so we got to keep people safe. And so we're going to watch to see what happens. Again, we believe that measures we have taken are really proactive at trying to mitigate the concern with losing additional concrete off the spillway. So again, trying to set expectations, we may see some of that move. And so at the moment, I need to get some water out of this reservoir. So as long as we don't see, catastrophic loss of a lot of concrete, then we're going to need to roll through this. We need to use this spillway at least one more time and maybe two more times. And so again, when we see what happens, if it all stays there and it's great, we'll look to see if we can do more measures so we can, again, use that spillway again. If we see a lot of trouble, that's why we have our monitoring teams and we can adjust on the fly. And that's why I so appreciate the various agencies, the technical side as well as the regulatory agencies here in this unified command, so we can have these conversations on the fly, reach agreement, and if we need to deploy another corrective measure, we can do it. I mean, I appreciate the grout and the rock bolting. A lot of this comes from the Army Corps of Engineers. That's why they're part of our command structure, is so we can kind of quickly assess and make those decisions and assess the safety aspects of this, the constructability, the expected results of that ever. But we're also dealing with, as we learned through all this, Mother Nature's right behind you. We've been lucky with the amazing weather we've had over the last couple of weeks. But as this project has told us, you got to be ready for everything. Yeah.
Do you know when reconstruction could begin in earnest on the spillway?
That's a good question. So when you ask that question, it's already started. The drill rig's on site. I mean, you might not see the concrete and the form boards going up as an example, but the building the haul roads, the rock crushing plant on site, the concrete batch plant, all the cultural assessments, all the stormwater management, all that's important to start the construction. So that is starting now. Again, once you get the physical design done, approved, vetted through all the regulatory agencies and the independent board, then you'll start seeing more material. But there are some things that we need to start on. Part of the reconstruction will be prioritizing what concrete needs to come off that mountain. So you might see the concrete at the lower part of the spillway be removed before any work is done on the top. But work is planned on the top. So the spillway that you see up here, again, you may not see later in the summer, so they might want to replace that. I expect that they would. Now, you might not see that until late in the summer, but that is, I think, an important part of how we move forward.
Do you anticipate the spillway gates staying basically the same?
Yeah, the spillway gates, obviously they're an important part of assessing the condition of the spillway itself, but any complete redo of the spillway is a completely different activity, and that's factored into, if there's changes need to be, it'll come into what's a permanent fix look like.
Okay, I think we're wrapped up with questions.
Yep.
All right, everyone, thank you for joining us. And the spillway flow will commence on or around 11 o'clock.